So let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Shana MacDonald, who will talk to you about how Generation Z is using social media during the pandemic. So Dr. MacDonald is Associate Professor in Communication Arts and current President of the Film Studies Association of Canada. Her SSHRC-funded interdisciplinary research is situated between film, media, and performance studies, and examines intersectional feminism within social and digital media, popular culture, cinema, performance, and public art. Dr. MacDonald is a convener of the Q Lab, a feminist design lab dedicated to developing new forms of relationality through technologies of public performance. Through the lab, Shana co-runs the online archive Feminist Do Media, and we can share the Instagram handle shortly, and feminist think tank gatherings at the GI. She has published in Feminist Media Studies, Feminist Media Histories, Media Theory Journal, and the Canadian Journal of Film Studies, and is lead author on the forthcoming book, Networked Feminist Activisms. She holds a PhD in Communication and Culture, an MA in Cinema and Media Studies from American University, and a BFA in Image Arts from Martin University. And we'll also put the handles below. So Dr. MacDonald, please go ahead, welcome.
Okay, thanks so much. I'm actually gonna start with a poll. I'm gonna get Russell to do question number 1, because as much as I'm gonna be teaching or speaking about Gen Z today, I wanna know about who's in the audience and where we're at in terms of our use of social media. So we're gonna put forward a really quick poll. It's pretty straightforward. And we're seeing stuff coming in, so that's super great, thank you. I'm gonna wait till that comes in just so I can get some information from you all. But yeah, thanks for having me, and I'm super thrilled to be here today. I feel like you're all the experts, and I'm just gonna give you a little bit of insight from my own perspective and my own research. But I really look forward to our conversation at the end of this and the questions that you might have. So what we're seeing here is I'm asking, where are you getting your COVID-related info from? So the majority of you are saying that it's Twitter. And I would agree that's where it's coming for me as well. And so I think it's important for us to keep this in mind, because we are probably a different demographic than the one that I'm about to talk about. So just to launch right in then, you may be, I'm gonna close this now if that's okay. You may be attending today because you want insights into how Gen Z is actually being reached by social media and getting health info during the pandemic. And you might hope that I'm going to tell you what's worked so far and how they've been using social media to navigate their information. So unfortunately, if I can move forward there we go. The spoiler alert I'm going to give you is that they're not getting COVID health information from social media at all. And I'm telling you this from my experience as someone who works closely with them as a professor. They're in my classes, and we talk about this quite extensively, especially in this last semester. And so it's not provable by stats, but it's provable by my very sustained conversations with them. This is a problem and a missed opportunity for several reasons. One is that social media and internet usage in particular has increased exponentially since the beginning of lockdowns. A large amount of this traffic for older generations is actually being navigated or put towards national news sites and local news sites. And I think that's actually really great, because that way we're making sure that we don't have a lot of misinformation if we're going there for our information. But within the Gen Z, the majority of their traffic is going to TikTok. And I've got some links at the bottom of studies that have been done about this, so we can talk about those at the end. So the other thing I want to talk about here is that Gen Z are both politically engaged and technologically savvy. A 2018 Pew Research study said that noted that 95% of 13 to 17-year-olds have access to a smartphone, and 97% of them are using at least one of the 7 major online platforms. So this makes them the perfect combination for people who can share and spread factual information and turn it into an easily adoptable trend. They are less likely to buy and spread misinformation. They're actually very concerned with being informed, critically aware citizens, especially digital media users who have a certain sense of responsibility. They're also really engaged in social media and quite politically engaged. And we can think about this in terms of the activism they've created with climate change. And March for Our Lives happening in the US a couple of years ago was very much oriented through their generation. And a simple example from this summer is how they mobilized on TikTok to buy a large amount of tickets for a Trump rally in order to ensure that it was not well attended as a sort of PR stunt. So they're very, very savvy with how they use media. So I think we need to think about that quite seriously. Who are they? let me just see here. So I teach them and they're absolutely wonderful. I have a lot of hope in the future because of this generation. I'm deeply impressed with them on every level. They're born after 1996, so the oldest are about 23, the youngest are preteens. I think probably my 8-year-old son is at the very tail end of this generation. They make up the majority of university students right now, and they're about to enter the workforce en masse. They're notably different from millennials, and this is a point that I want to kind of think through a little bit. So they have a really dark and absurdist sense of humor. I would argue this is because the world they're inheriting is actually quite bleak, and it's turned them to a certain sense of criticality, and it's coming out of their humor. They have quite a big distrust in corporations and institutions, and they're not easily impressed by polished influencer culture or content. So this is really different from millennials who, and I'm making very broad generalizations, but I think they're useful for the purpose of this conversation. Millennials expect their social media and their lifestyles to be well curated by others, and they're willing to pay for that. That has largely driven the way in which social media has functioned for the past 10 years. They're the generation that made foodie practices kind of well documented on Instagram, and we know from the trope of the avocado toast and all that stuff. And so they're really different. Gen Z is not as easily persuaded by branded content. I outline all of this because the well-worn playbook of social media practices that's been developed since the beginning of Web 2.0 and the rise of social media platforms is not reaching this group. Gen Z are digital natives. They don't have a sense of the world without smartphones. And I think it's important to kind of keep in mind because I'm kind of an older millennial, a little bit of a Gen Xer. And so I have a full adult life pre-smartphone. They don't even have a childhood sense without smartphone. And we need to think about that a bit. They also use social media, which is hardwired into their sense of self in order to express themselves and relate to others. So their identities are really formed around their interactions with social media, which they've been using since they were in middle school, if not earlier. I outline all this because we need to use new approaches to reach them. So where are they receiving their info? Memes, TikTok, and Instagram. So I want to pull up, as I'm talking, the second poll. So this would be question 3, poll number 3, because I want to do a comparison to see, you know, with us versus them. I want to kind of think through that a little bit. Okay. So 59% of you then are sharing jokes, inspiration with family, friends, coworkers in your network. So you are in some ways like them in the sense that the large majority of you are using it for jokes, but 37% of you are not using internet memes at all. And I think that's really important to note in contrast because this is how they communicate full stop. All of their messaging to each other, whether it be on Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, their text chains, their Google chats, whatever, they're like actually working through either emojis or memes. There's very little text-based communication happening. It's all kind of back and forth, meme, GIF, meme, GIF, meme, GIF. One really interesting, and this is kind of off-topic point that I learned, you know, in class a couple of years ago was I asked my students, why are you so obsessed with Friends in the Office? Why do you, you know, binge watch it all the time? They're like, because I need to understand the language of the memes that are being shared. I have to understand the inside jokes that are being pulled from The Office and Friends in order to be able to participate in the meme culture. So I share that with you to show and underscore how central memes are actually in their life as forms of communication, as it's directing what they actually watch on television in their free time. All right, so memes, TikTok, and Instagram are where they're getting the information. They're not on Facebook at all. I can't do Facebook groups with my students anymore the way I used to because they don't have accounts. Sometimes they're on Twitter if they're particularly politically engaged, but the majority of them are not on Twitter. And they do not watch news or read newspapers or listen to the news at all. They might get it from their parents if they're, you know, in good contact and regular contact with them, but they're not watching news. So this is a challenge. And I think this means that what we need to do is meet them where they're at. We need to migrate targeted info to their spaces of use. And I think that that includes using them as amplifiers to circulate key information. If we consult with them broadly and work with them, we can probably produce social media campaigns that will actually reach them. The challenges here is that they ignore ads and official information. They have told me that if a government-sponsored or any kind of sponsored ad comes up on their TikTok, they scroll right by it. They will not look at it, they will not click. They also may not have access to the kinds of information we want to see or want them to see because of their algorithm. So everybody's algorithm is curated specifically to them, dependent on who they follow and how long they actually stay on any particular post. and it's constantly updating itself. So there's a really good possibility they're never going to encounter health information because of this. So we have to find a way to get into their sites via the people that they will listen to. We need to actually use their influencers, even if they won't call them influencers. Again, remember that if something is too thirsty, and that's their word, they will outright reject it and it will fall flat. So you want to make sure that you're getting their help so that things don't fall flat and it's a waste of your time and resources. And in order to do this, you need to understand meme culture because it's going to become your best friend. So I'm going to talk a little bit about memes because that's my actual area of research. So what you often think about as memes is what is shown here, where there's a picture with text. That's what we call an image macro. So that's just a fancy term for what you would consider an internet meme. Memes are actually a term that was developed by a scholar named Richard Dawkins in 1975. And he used it to define, and I'm going to use his words here, behavior and cultural ideas that are shared from person to person. And this can include language, so language can be a meme, all the way to the conventions of football. So any idea we have that we share that becomes a norm is a meme. That's his definition. Internet memes, that are the term used by media scholars, according to Linda Borsai, who's a media scholar, this is a quote from her: internet memes are a piece of content spreading online from user to user that changes along the way. So this implies two things. Remixing. Memes are interesting to Gen Z because of the ability to remix. They're part of what we call participatory culture. They want to have a say in this. They want to be a user that's active and engaged. So we can remix and things can become viral. That's the beauty of the internet meme and why it's so important. In my class that I'm teaching this term for first year students, it's called What Do You Meme? And we're literally just studying memes. And they're handing in 12-page research papers right now. And the things that they're saying about memes are absolutely outstanding. They're going so deep dive into it. It's so fascinating. And so I just want to highlight that because they really care about this subject. So memes are not just this picture text thing that you're seeing on screen right now. They can include hashtags. They can include viral media events, but also social movements. So Me Too, Black Lives Matter, I Don't Know More are all part of what we would consider meme culture in their various manifestations. It also includes viral campaigns like the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, and most importantly now, TikTok video challenges, which I would argue, and we can talk about this in questions, are very sophisticated for how they incorporate music, text, and moving bodies, and why that's really important for putting forward a message. So the key components of all memes are that they activate or elicit specific emotional responses in us. We live in an attention economy. Our attention is the most profitable and important resource for all growing corporations. This is what is the reality of what we now call platform capitalism. So everybody's vying for our attention and we have fatigue because of that. So not just Zoom fatigue, but information overload on every possible sort of facet of our lives. So we know that we have to hook users, and we know that to keep their attention, we have to appeal to their emotions. This is rhetoric 101. The ancient Greeks used this, but it's particularly relevant as well today in digital media contexts. So clickbait is king because it uses our emotional responses to draw us in and to keep us on a particular post. This happens largely through three emotions: anger, fear, and humor. Gen Z in particular prefer humor. They're done with divisiveness and anger. They live fear. They're so anxious. They don't want to be reminded of their fear. So they will respond the most to humor. Their humor in particular is both self-deprecating and nonsensical. And so, you know, if you look over here at this meme of the blinking guy on the left, he is like one of their favorite meme prototypes. And if you look at the memes that I showed you on the previous page, they like to do a lot of wordplay, a lot of puns, a lot of absurdity. It's something that I can't even understand how to connect with half the time. I need them to explain the jokes to me. But they also love that. They love having their own inside jokes. It just pleases them to no end. So I wanted to outline a little bit of that before I kind of switch into thinking about what has been working in my mind. And again, I'm not the expert on this, but just as a person in the public, I will look through a couple of things that I feel have really worked in social media that maybe we can apply over to Gen Z. So the first thing is infographics. I'm drawing your attention here to Dr. Kelly Grindrod, who's a colleague of mine at the University of Waterloo. She works in the School of Pharmacy and is currently the Canadian Pharmacist of the Year. She's really well known for producing infographics for the pharmacy profession, but also for the general public. This is something that her research has been working on for at least the last 5 to 7 years. Here's a couple of infographics produced by her team for COVID. And the one on the right here is about the importance of naloxone kits during the pandemic and how we need to mobilize those. The one on the left is about burnout, a really kind of key thing that maybe isn't being operationalized in our discussions enough. And the one in the middle, I think, is more for health professionals. But if you look at these infographics, you're noticing that visuals are really important. And I'm just reiterating what was discussed in the previous keynote this morning. And these really short to the point messages. A couple of recommendations I have with infographics is you need to work with someone who actually has a design background, because the balance of visual and text is really important for whether someone's going to sit with the infographic or not. The other insight I wanted to give you with infographics is that Gen Z actually loves them. They're really responsive to infographics. They love making them, they love sharing them. So that's the way I think into having a conversation with them. Another thing that's been on my radar in terms of what's working is the work of Audrey Tang, who is the digital culture minister for Taiwan. She has been at the center of a lot of media coverage because she, early on in the pandemic, came up with ways to deal with misinformation in Taiwan, and they've been kind of taken up by media. So this Wired story, I have the link to at the bottom, is useful for you learning more about that. But I had the pleasure of hearing Audrey speak at a lecture out of the Shorenstein Center at Harvard earlier this fall, and she shared what the strategy was in Taiwan at the beginning of the pandemic and the spread of misinformation. And it was rapid response. The minute misinformation dropped, her team created memes in response, and they used humor. And the reason that she chose humor was because the insight was, if they were just to hit the public with kind of dry facts, or anything that would shame and blame and create divisiveness within the culture, it would just fail, and that it wouldn't allow for any kind of productive conversation or camaraderie amongst the public. So humor was the way in which they went. So they would just circulate a ton of memes in response to whatever the misinformation was, directly targeting it through humor. And the fact is that the memes would spread just as virally as the misinformation, and would kind of allow for a public reframing of the conversation that would allow for joking. Everybody shuts down with blame and shame. Nobody wants to listen to a list of dry facts. But if there's this really quick way that you can get into thinking about the issue and pivoting it really fast, I think it's quite successful. So I wanted to draw your attention to the work of Tang, because I think it's really, really important. I've pulled a couple of tweets that I thought were interesting to show the ways in which we could really quickly do something in rapid response. So how do we do rapid response? Well, I think that there's a way in which we can use humor, we can use relatable metaphors, and also relatable faces, public faces to the crisis. So the tweet here on the left, and this won't work for Gen Z, but it would work for some of us who are older, asks people to remember about smoking sections on airplanes, and how the reality is anywhere you were on the airplane, you could smell the smoke, as a really good metaphor for how a virus can spread airborne. Just a quick, easy picture that involves your body and your senses. On the right here, we see a nurse who's being very direct in their appeal. We don't want the applause, we don't want the pizza, we don't want your gratitude, we want you to stop killing us. Very direct, to the point. This could be turned into a meme very, very easily. So taking on that kind of ethos, that authority of people on the front lines, and bringing that into public, I think is really important. I think the hashtag Stronger Together was actually very, very effective at the beginning of the pandemic. It created a sense of civic responsibility. It created a sense of like a national unity. Clearly we need new ones because we're in pandemic fatigue. We are in the attention economy. We need to kind of vamp, do 2.0 on our efforts right now in the public. And so I think these are ways that we can do it. This last example from Twitter, I thought was really productive and could be very easily turned into a meme. Coronavirus explained in craft terms. You and your 9 friends are crafting. One is using glitter. How many projects have glitter? So just that real simple sense of glitter goes everywhere. Coronavirus is glitter. And then you've got the kind of follow-up humor here with someone else saying, yeah, all of them have glitter, and then everybody in your car and everybody else, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that these are effective ways in which you can kind of change public perception and thinking about spreadability, which might be something that we're not thinking about as much these days in the public. And again, I'm speaking as a member of the public, not as someone who has any expertise in health research or communication. This is one meme that I want to bring up for a couple of reasons. So if we look at the meme, 2019, stay away from negative people, 2020, stay away from positive people, there's a joke. We're playing on a particular viral practice around memes in culture right now, where we like look back at 2019, think about 2020. It's kind of a historical comparison as joke. And it works, right? We're also kind of playing a little bit with humor on making fun of the self-care movement and living our best lives, which is becoming a bit of a stereotype and a trope that we like to think about and make fun of. So this could work. This could be a very quick way of kind of thinking about social distancing. But I want us to be careful when we're producing memes, because I think there's a potential with this meme to create negative connotations as well. I think that thinking about staying away from positive people in this sense could create stigma around people who have tested positive for COVID. And it could play into the kinds of xenophobia and racism that we see that are just horrific across the country that we don't want. So I want, when we produce memes as communicators, to think through the unintended consequences of those, so that you don't have PR disasters and you're not doing harm. So memes can't do harm. So we have to think about, I mean, humor has to toe a line, and we have to think about what could happen with that. So I brought this one up because I was like, don't do this one. But it is effective in how it's getting to that point. But how, you know, is this going to harm is the question we always have to ask when we're communicating and producing communication for the public. So my last example here is TikTok. Dr. Naheed Dassani is the expert at this. He's amazing. I have a lot of respect for what he's doing in the media right now. So TikTok videos by influencers are a really great resource, especially for Gen Z. I love this particular video by Dr. Dassani. I wanted to play it for you, but he won't let you download them. So I took screenshots. But it's really direct, right? Why should we be using TikTok for public health messaging? And then he just gets really straight to the point, because nobody's watching press conferences. Meet them where they're at. That's the message that I kind of want to think about and that I kind of pose to you at this moment in time. So to conclude, I just want to say, you know, we have a vaccine on the horizon. And so we have a large risk of misinformation and about losing the narrative to conspiracy. And that's a real concern, I think, for us media scholars. You know, we're watching the way conspiracy is taking over public discourse around politics. And, you know, we know about anti-vaxxing as a very, very prominent movement through social media. So I think this is something that we want to be concerned about. We know that misinformation spreads 6 times more effectively than facts. So we have an uphill battle that the social media platforms themselves are not helping us fight. So we have to be a little bit savvy about this. I would suggest that we have to get ahead of this and get Gen Z on our side, because I guarantee you they will go to the mat with their older relatives around vaccines if we make sure that they're inspired to do so. We need to make them aware of the best health practices and vaccine awareness and help them to get us to make it go trending or go viral and trend. So that's all that I want to kind of share with you. And I really look forward to having conversations for the second part of the talk. So thank you. Here's my Twitter handle. I'd love to get to know all of you and meet you on Twitter so I can learn from you. And here's the resources. I've got references to a couple of studies. And also, please watch The Social Dilemma if you haven't. It's really, really important. And the work of Dr. Joan Donovan around misinformation is also great. Okay. So this will be made available to you. Thank you.
That's great. You did so much in such a quick time. It's really awesome. I learned a lot of that, and I'm not on TikTok yet, and our organization is also not on TikTok yet. But you know, I keep hearing about. You know, obviously we all hear about it, and I talked about it in the previous session about TikTok and the viral video in the summertime, and how to take advantage of it. But one question I have, while everyone's thinking of their question, is you know, we mentioned about you talked about participatory culture, and in your opinion, if we know organizations, healthcare, especially in healthcare, you know, that, you know, in most cases, the messaging is not as, I guess, so to speak, fun. Do you feel that the participatory culture would kind of pivoting and shifting, would it turn, do you feel it would turn off others who are not, you know, open to embracing TikTok, but just want the usual mainstream kind of press conference, so to speak, how that, like that particular TikTok you showed?
Mm-hmm. I mean, in some ways, in a perfect world, you would have different campaigns targeted at different audiences. You would have the resources available to do multi-pronged campaigns. That would be my advice. And so you're like, okay, we're going to reach this demographic because we know they're using this, and we need to reach them with this language. Whereas, you know, another demographic is going to want something very different. But, you know, I mean, I think that my experience with press conferences is that even like, you know, my mom, who's a senior, is completely burnt out from press conferences and she watches them every day. Like
sure.
we're losing the thread there. So I don't know if that's really, you know, I think that the keynote this morning was actually really on point in suggesting weekly missives, like just paring down that information and making it really direct. And knowing like every Monday you're going to get more information, but not every day, you know? So my quick answer is multiple approaches for multiple audiences is always ideal, but I know that's a question of resources.
Oh no, that's a very good answer. I think that's probably the answer. Does anyone have any questions for Shana that come to mind about adopting, you know, TikTok, you know, kind of tailoring messaging on different socials? The research.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Thank you very much, Dr. MacDonald. I really appreciated hearing your perspective and your insights, this particular age group, which I have not engaged directly, but have seen the work that's evolving around campaigns outside of our hospital's work. So it's definitely on the radar as to how to engage going forward. But I, in terms of paring information down, you know, that delicate balance is what, you know, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about when you have intergenerational, so different age groups that interface. So like, for instance, where we are in the Winnebago region, James Bay region of Northeastern Ontario, so we have elders that don't necessarily all have technology, and then we have the youth who do. And so wanting to make sure that the youth have information and can share that information with their elder from their source, and then somehow have that linguistically appealing. So the elders might say speak different dialects of Cree, and then the youth speak English, but, you know, understand the dialect, right? So what would be your suggestion in terms of bridging that generation gap with using a medium like TikTok? Like how would you see meme culture being valuable in a culture that maybe values humor, but there is the generational divide between how that humor is expressed? Elders mainly express humor together, face to face, and on the TikTok culture, it's not face to face; it's on the virtual medium, right? So, what would you say as some suggestions in terms of bridging that gap?
I think it's such an excellent question. You know, one of the things that I understand in my research is that Indigenous presence on TikTok is huge, and you know, I feel Indigenous communities are you know, there's native TikTok, and it's a thing, and I feel like Indigenous social media users are incredible, especially the younger ones, are incredibly savvy in how they're using social media to promote their own messaging of things that are concerning their communities. And so they're already there. And so I feel like that's, you know, what I would suggest is that you work with the people who are already on TikTok that are part of the community, and you sort of get them to think through how they might want to incorporate multiple languages, jokes that might work within their community due to kind of different phrasing and wording that is particular to their community. I mean, ideally compensation would be key for that, right? I have a whole thing I could say about the free labor we give to social media corporations and the problems of that. So if there was funding to kind of work with communities and the youth within communities to be like, I want you to make some TikTok for us, and then I want you to bring this to your elders and share it with them, and sort of, or maybe have the elders be working with them on how to produce the content, so that it allows for that dialogue to happen. The great thing about TikTok, and this is why I spend so much time talking about it, is that a lot of information can be shared on that screen over 20 to 30 seconds. And it's done in a way that keeps you watching because of the music. The music is, you want to hear the song clips. They're really effective, you know, affecting. They affect us emotionally, but also effective because they keep us watching. We know that Gen Z has an attention span of between 8 to 12 seconds. So, you know, you're not getting much more than one TikTok video to get the information across. But if you notice, unlike a meme where you'd really have to pare down the information and it may not translate beyond a youth audience, like I said, their humor feels different in some way. The TikTok videos allow you to like put in like 5 to 10 bullet points, really, where you could be like, you know, if the issue was social distancing, you could be very clear about that. No one in your house, or no one outside your house, blah, blah, blah. Whatever the messaging is, you could do your 5 to 10 bullet points because you just point to them, right? To the beats. And so I feel like you could work with the youth in the community, perhaps have them speak with elders about how to share this message. And that allows for dialogue and the sharing kind of organically of information. I don't know. I mean, that's my best guess from being outside of working with the population, if that makes sense.
No, that's great points. And actually, now as you said that point, I'm thinking back 2 slides ago when you're talking about, you know, like getting actual factual information about vaccine, et cetera, out there. That would be a great conduit to get that out to audiences that may be skeptical of, you know, oh, why should I get this, or how is this going to help, or why should I social distance, whatever the case may be, whatever the group you're targeting is. So that's a really good point. And I actually, when you mentioned you can do 5 to 10 bullet points, that's a lot of information you can get across, like compared to a tweet or compared to an Instagram post, or and yeah, I mean, you have to, you're right, to pare it really way back. You can't make it busy, or else people will, it'll lose its, you know, like its meaning.
And you could kind of reuse the same 10 bullet points with different songs, with different people doing the whatever you want to do that speak to different community engagement. So, you know, with Indigenous communities, you can use like the rich set of Indigenous contemporary music that's out there that really kind of speaks to a sense of identity, and do that in other community settings as well. So that catchiness of the music, I think, is key. You know, one meme that I was thinking about, I saw a tweet or something the other day that was like, what's in the vaccine? And I was like, do you know what's in your cereal? What? You're not going to know what's in the vaccine. And even if you knew what, like, I want to see that meme come back as like a really quick kind of pushback to that kind of anti-vax question. Yeah. Right? Like, what do you mean what's in the vaccine? Are you like what? So I think that would be meme appropriate to just push back on that with humor and hunt down that question forever. But I do think that if you want more sustained information, then a medium like TikTok is much more appropriate.
No, totally. Are there any other questions from the audience? I guess my question is, and you could obviously forgive my ignorance, but does a TikTok have to have music?
Oh, I don't think so. You can have like, what's the word? Like in camera audio. So it could be just you. It could be just like your recording. Yeah. It doesn't have to have music.
Yeah.
No. And these are really user-friendly technologies. Like they're not that hard to, you know, there are meme generators. If you want to make a bunch of memes, it's very quick and easy.
Yeah.
I've done it, so.
I just have a question, and excuse my ignorance because I'm not up on TikTok, so I guess I'll have to get my sons to show me that one too. But so the music that's used for it is all like copyright free type thing because it's specific to that platform?
Yeah, I mean, it's little excerpts, probably no more than 15 seconds on repeat, or maybe 50 seconds max. A lot of artists and musicians want you to use their music because if it goes viral, it's really good exposure for them. So a lot of emerging musicians will use it, and will pay influencers to use their music in order to get it out there. So it's a way of promoting music. So there's no copyright issues.
Yeah.
And you can use you can work from an available set of clips. You can work with that. That will be fine. You won't get in trouble.
Our only experience with it was we found out staff were using it within the hospital to do little dances in empty rooms and then posting some stuff inappropriately and then their badges on there. And it's like, okay, what are they doing during work hours using TikTok? So then I had to sign up because we monitor the social media. So that sort of is, you know, our experience so far with TikTok is probably not the best use of it on work time, right? In our facilities, and then posting it publicly.
I think a clear set of protocols and social media practices for each institution is really important for that reason. Yeah, because you don't want to be.
But yeah, it's not always followed. That's the thing. People just don't get it when it's out there. It's out there.
It's out there. Yeah, very true.
Yep.
There's a question here. Thank you. This has been very informative and interesting. Are there any examples of channels or accounts we can follow that have used memes or TikTok to communicate to Gen Z in healthcare setting?
I haven't found any. And I asked my students, I said, where are you getting your COVID information? Show me the sites. And they're like, we don't have, we aren't.
Oh, interesting.
TikTok itself is amazing. If you go to TikTok and you type in COVID, they have a huge array of information that they have produced. They have been working closely with, I think it was the WHO, maybe the CDC, but I'm pretty sure the WHO early on to stop the spread of misinformation. So they have a whole, like if you just go on TikTok and type in COVID, you're gonna see a lot of stuff. But that's not getting Gen Z. I have no answer for that. This is why because I'm not Gen Z, so I can't even get inside the minds of, like, I tried to make my algorithm on TikTok mimic theirs, and I can't. It's not possible. So you need to consult with them. You need to hire and work with them and get them to show you how to use TikTok. Like we can't be making, like, I am not the expert on that, right? Unfortunately. I understand them and I understand the platforms, but they have to show you their algorithms and what's working.
That's
unfortunately.
true.
But I think Dr. Naheed Dasani is like a really great entry point. So follow him, see, and you can always just go to someone and follow them and see who's following them and see who they're following. And that's a way that you can kind of curate your own feed, right? So finding people like him and reaching out, you know, there, I think is a great start.
Okay, so yeah, that kind of hit this question here from Zanet about do you have any examples of healthcare organizations? I guess you mentioned a person, the doctor, connecting with Gen Z in a real way and you know, conveying any clever memes by health organizations. So yes, you're mentioning Dr. Dasani is a good person to start with then.
I think so, yeah. I mean, early on, there was a lot of hand washing videos going on. That was great. So sometimes you almost want to take it out of the doctor healthcare world and make it a meme unto itself that everybody can feel that they can take up and participate in. So there was a ton of hand washing challenges, and I thought that was really productive. But this is the problem with the internet. Like, it's ephemeral. I can't even slow that down enough to show you what happened 6 months ago, but it was viral for like a good week or two, which is about as long as you're going to get. And everybody was doing the hand wash, and it was super funny. And, you know, so my advice is have your kind of doctor influencers, but then go off book and find ways to make it be a thing. And I don't, like, the complicated thing about virality is you can never anticipate if it's going to work or not. And so I do think that the more insight we can get from those who understand it the best, i.e. early 20-year-olds, late teens, the better.
No, absolutely.
They could give you better ideas about how to make something go viral. Like if it's like the vaccine dance, like even trying to, like, even saying that, I'm like, wow, that wouldn't work. Like that sounds ridiculous. But you know, I believe that with enough conversation and experimentation, things could work.
Yeah. A question just came in. Do you think TikTok will last as a comms platform, knowing that it can or soon could be shut down in the US?
Yeah, I think it's hard to predict. Because Facebook is on its way out, Snapchat has not held the ground it wanted to. I think it will hold. I think it will, with that generation in particular. Yes, I do. It seems to have a bit of a good ethics around. I mean, I feel weird saying that about any social media company because none of them have good ethics. But it feels that it has a bit of a sense of social responsibility, whether that's PR for the platform itself, I don't know. I think that all platforms only exist if we use them and we buy into them. And Gen Z finds that TikTok is the thing that is allowing for rapid dissemination of politics on their terms. Mm-hmm. So as long as that's working, it's working. If they get into a PR nightmare like Facebook, where public loses trust in them and doesn't want to share information because of their ethical issues, then it will stop being a platform. So maybe I think TikTok has like 8 years.
Still pretty good considering.
I know, I'm being generous. We can't predict. We can't predict what happens with social media.
Zanet added, there's a parody of Beauty and the Beast song, Be Our Guest, about COVID health advice. It's on Twitter as well. And I wonder if this resonates with Gen Z. Yeah, I wonder, does Gen Z like Beauty and the Beast?
Yeah, I bet they would. Anything nostalgic, anything 90s, they love. They're just and if you're from the 90s, they just are enamored with you.
That's hilarious because I love the 90s and I'm not Gen Z.
I know, I don't get it. Like, millennials are pretty into the 80s, but Gen
Yeah.
Z's really into the 90s, which
Yeah.
is why you're seeing Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Saved by the Bell, like
Saved
all
by
these
the Bell,
reboots.
yeah. Saved by the Bell
It's
actually
the
is
best.
hilarious. I know I'm going off script, but Saved by the Bell, the reboot actually is kind of funny. Like it's kind of hilarious. Anyways, thank you so much for this awesome presentation. I can totally see this being a session in in itself again, and taking even the points you made into another session. So we hope to see you again, Shana. Thank you so much for offering us all this amazing insight.